Another very interesting shoot, which actually became quite a nightmare, was the one we did at Dunkirk. This was a shoot planned over half a day in an absolutely unfamiliar French town, and we don't have budgets for things like extensive recce's, and we were running late by a couple of hours. So from 6 hours of daylight, which we were supposed to have, we were down to just about 4 hours of daylight, which we had to cover 4 different shooting locations inside Dunkirk. We knew nothing about the town. No one there spoke a word of English. Well, we first had to try and locate a cab driver who would take us to this absolutely deserted little spot on a beach midways between two towns, where we would shoot near a ruined shipwreck. It's almost impossible to try and explain to someone who doesn't speak English what a shipwreck is. So here I was trying to mime my way through this, like saying that boom, bomb, people dying, ship sinking, and the guy was looking at me like I must be nuts. Add to it that I was wearing my monkey cap and my bindi and chashma and all, and doing all of this. Finally, it struck me to Google pictures of the shipwreck and show it to him, and say that this is where we want to go. So the guy finally realized that, okay, all the bombing and explosions and people dying are things in the past and not something these guys are planning.
Some ship got away, some are still here. The crested eagle became a sitting duck. Since May 1940, this ship has been stuck.
So we managed to get to the shipwreck, we managed to shoot there, and after that we had to get to this war cemetery, where my plan was to try and locate the graves of these 4 or 5 Indian soldiers, which I had heard was somewhere in there, except we didn't know how to locate these tombs, these graves. So we said, let's start from one end of the cemetery and kind of go through the graves, grave by grave, and hope that some Indian names will jump out at us. We couldn't think of a better plan. So we started, and then we came to this one grave which looked promising because it had no name. And we said, hey, we can use that as a wild card, we can always pretend that some unknown Indian soldier must be buried in there under that grave. We could take that angle.
British took from India, soldier and nude. Finding their memorial is on my schedule.
After this, we found another tombstone which had this name, Merchant. And I said, hey, Merchant, that sounds like a Parsi name, so this could be Indian, right? So again, we shot near Private Merchant's tombstone. As you can see, it was quite dark by then. It was in fact too dark to shoot me, and the only source of light we had was this phone torch, because we hadn't come prepared to shoot in the dark. It happened to be Halloween that day, and there was this big Halloween moon up in the sky, so we said, let's call it a day today. We had a ferry to catch the next morning at 9, and I googled to see what time sunrise was the next morning, and I told TV that, I want to go back to that cemetery at 6:30 in the morning, and I want to give it one last shot, spend half an hour there trying to once again locate the Indian soldiers. So that's what we did. We kind of landed up there at the cemetery, the crack of dawn with the sun just about rising, and there it was, staring us in the face right there.
I have found their memorial right on schedule.
So this was a real cliffhanger of a shoot, which we didn't know we'd manage or not. The other kind of shoot, which is sometimes very difficult, is a shoot which relies on certain specific weather conditions.
It is raining, and I wish I could have some smoking Ilish.
Except that rain is pretty impossible to predict or control, or to summon up when you want it to. And obviously we don't have budgets for things like rain machines and water effects and all of that. So we did the best that we could. I kind of again googled to see what the weather forecast was like and when it was likely to rain, which day, which time, and I kind of got all togged up, made up, got ready and went and stood near the window when it was supposed to rain, except that it didn't rain, and it didn't rain. I spent the entire day waiting for it to rain, and it never rained. And then, another morning I was like completely groggy, and I was kind of waking up, and I looked out the window and suddenly, hey, it's raining outside. God, let's run, where's my sari, where's my blouse, what was I wearing, like through the rest of the song. So I kind of quickly got ready as fast as I could, and I went and stood next to the window, and it stopped raining. So this was the most frustrating bit of shooting I've ever done, where the rain just wouldn't comply with our wishes. So I guess these were some of the vlogs where the shoot turned out to be the toughest part of the entire creation process. As far as the editing goes, I think Dirty Beach would definitely qualify as the toughest edit I've ever done. Because, I decided that I didn't want to shoot this song like a music video. I didn't want to shoot it like any kind of a regular song video at all. I mean, the work that they're doing on the beach was so important that I didn't want to disturb them in any way. There was no way I was going to say that, oh, can you please dump that kachra out and, do a retake of picking it up for the camera and, that kind of stuff. So I decided that, I would be invisible through the process. So the deal I had with Afroz was that I would land up week after week for beach cleaning, since it does happen to be my beach, and I would spend an hour cleaning with them and an hour shooting. So I did that for a few weekends, and then I realized that I would require a lot more footage than I was able to manage this way. So I roped in CB, who came in with his own set of cameras.
CB? Hi. Don't worry.
What we do is that, we'd try and be as invisible and unobtrusive as possible through the entire process. And we shot over many, many weekends, about 12 or 13 weekends. So we ended up with massive amounts of footage. So for the edit, I had to literally sit and wade through hours and hours and hours of beach cleaning footage. It was, I think, definitely one of the toughest and most time-consuming edits I've done. Yeah, without a doubt.
We must clean up.
As far as the writing goes, I think for sure the recipe songs, and for that matter the COVID Handwashing Song, would be the vlogs where the writing is the toughest part of the entire process. In fact, any vlog where, the basic content matter is fixed and rigid and unchangeable, and where my main job is to restructure it in a way that it has rhyme and meter and a hummable, catchy hook line and a nice melody with recall value and all of that. That is a real challenge, to just not only get a nice song at the end of it, a song with recall preferably, but also at the end of the song have a process which leads to something edible or to a set of guidelines that people can use for a specific purpose. That is really challenging. As far as the tune making and the music making part goes, you see, I've been a commercial professional musician for over 2 decades now, so I think the music making part of it kind of happens on autopilot by now. Of course, it's one thing to make a melody, and it's another thing entirely to make a melody which is going to have recall and which people will be able to hum and which people will, like. So yeah, that bit still remains a bit challenging, but on the whole, I would say that the music making part of it is not really a stress factor for me. I hope that answers your complete set of questions, Karunamai. I really enjoyed answering that in detail. For those of you wondering what's happening here, I'm Sawan, hosting my first ever Q&A session for the Metronome, which is my song blog where I write and sing my original songs based on a wide variety of subjects. Subscribe to my channel at YouTube or on Facebook to see the vlogs and listen to the songs that I'm talking about in the Q&A session here.